All right. Well, hello, everyone. We are back for another meeting with Wesley. Trying to get a more open line of communication to those that are invested, to those that are looking to invest. Just kind of getting a face to face as face to face as Zoom gets. But yeah, I think last time we kind of had an open floor. Things develop in the last month, so I'll let you have the floor, Wesley, and then we can then go into some questions after that. But take it away,
Yeah,
sir.
sounds good, man. As always, I appreciate you having a forum. And like I said before, I know you get a lot of questions, man, and that's not something everyone knows. You don't get compensated for it, and I don't do anything or shade you. I think it's great that people can get an honest, um, just non-biased, let's talk, have an opinion. So I think that's cool, and I appreciate it. But yeah, really, just kind of as an update to start. Um, the last month overall from a Truckwise position, I think has started to take some steps in the right direction, which is positive. I'd like to dive into a few of those things and a few things that we're working on to make it better. Rangeway and trucking and the industry have taken some steps forward. March started that, April's continuing that, and maybe we already are in World War III. I'm not sure, depending on your definition of it, but what happens there can impact, I think, the overall economy to an extent. The interest rates, all those things we always kind of mention. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, a lot of people last year, and now looking back, it was kind of crazy. War is probably pretty good for trucking, terrible for everything else that's going on. So hopefully it doesn't happen. I don't want it to happen, never would wish it to happen. But if you want to look at where things are currently, there's already a war taking place, and how it impacts or how deep we get into it, to kind of tell people like it's not a doomsday there. It's, the economy crashes, okay, maybe there's some doomsday, but I think a lot of things to look at there, but we're still improving weekly on available freight. We're more honing in on guys now being able to optimize the routes that they're running based off where they live, which is things that during the wintertime it's really hard to do. You kind of got to run where the freight is, especially when these project oriented customers don't ship as much during that time. You got to shift them away. And being that we commit the vast majority of the guys to be home every single weekend, you got to start planning on Wednesday, usually how you're going to get them through the house on a Friday for their next two hops. And so we've been able to do a lot of that. The freight rates have started to tick up just overall. If people watch the spot market and things out there, the South started to pick up. My neighbors in roofing, they make shingles. They're blowing and going out in the western portion of the South or Southwest. Texas and all, they can't keep up with production. So I think those things are good from like a building standpoint. Our concrete and precast guys are going. Structural steel and fabricated steel stuff starting to pick up, which is something that has been fairly flat. It's consistent but pretty flat. And so when you kind of look, we don't haul a lot of lumber, especially if it's tarp. Those things are starting to tick up. Don't know if that means anything. I don't watch the new house build numbers or anything that much. I feel like interest rates are still making people a little leery, but also feel like there's a lot of pent up confidence in people in that are still out doing and spending to an extent. There are some people sitting on the sidelines, but some people have finally just said, okay, we've got to do this project, so let's go. So, you know, overall trucking, we can dive deep into that stuff later if you want to. I'd love to talk to a few specific things, like I say, about what we're doing to improve communications, some exciting news there, and address a few questions. Actually, I don't like watching myself on camera, but I went back and at least read a few of the comments on your last video, so I want to address a couple of those for guys that I know watch every time. And so, yeah, I mean, one guy said that I can talk, so I'll shut up for a second. But if you got something specific that you've heard or things that you think would be important out of what I've kind of mentioned that you want me to dive deep into, man, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I think the first one, and I know it's probably, maybe I'm hearing a delayed reaction. Someone's asking me, but it's already been responded to, whatever. But we started the year out. There was a lot of delayed payments, missed payments. Things got overlooked. You were sick. Your VP was still kind of onboarding into taking some of that responsibility on. But I don't know, you probably saw in the comment, like, there's still always the one or two people are like, I still never got paid for this month, still never got paid for that month. I don't know. What do you have to say to that? Like, do you have a checklist you go through to make sure, like, hey, everyone actually did get paid out, or is that someone else's responsibility? Like, ultimately, who's that come back to, and why would that happen if it's the case?
Yep, there's a few parts to that, and I'll start with my part of that, and where we've grown to with that now also. But back then we had just changed software, and I was still responsible for 100% of the process of at least getting the statement ready. Now, then at that point, it got handed off, and it would go into a spreadsheet, and it would get transposed in and go post in the portals. And there's no doubt we missed some. Like, the delay was because of new policies, procedures, us getting used to new software. Most of the ones that got completely, there was only probably a handful that got completely missed in general. Um, Most of those were ones that when we went and ran the statement, it didn't produce all the way through all the way. And checks and balances of coming back to it um, weren't real good at that point. Not really a better way to put that. Yes, there are lists. At that time, they were very rudimentary still, and I think that's, to speak towards the end of this here in a second. But it there's no question earlier in the year there were things missed. There were communication problems that exacerbated that, and I think that at its highest level is okay. We're in a slow part of the year in the software. People have heard me say 100 times that was more challenging than we even thought it was going to be, and we knew it was going to be challenging. What we've done to get better with that is now, you know, Retta has figured out how these things kind of work a little bit, and knows how to run the reports and the settlements and the statements out of the new software just as recently as this month. Right now, we're still having to get that out, go and fine tooth comb this stuff, find any issues, find any abnormalities. Right, like a couple that I was looking at um, before were, why is, especially on the option 2 and 3 guys, like, okay, revenues X, why does driver pay seem to be a little high? Why does fuel seem to be a little high? And there's things in those that can cause that. And maybe that's for a different call for a different day, but right, like, there's things that can make it appear higher than really what it is for the week. Or if your truck was down a few days and we had to pay the driver a couple of days, and there was no revenue, like, or fuel, you could fill up the last day of the month for $600 and that not be used to the next month. Like, there's a few things in there. We try to dig in to find where there's savings we can have. We've got an app that we're rolling out that'll help guys on their route that they're on find the cheapest fuel. Right, we have a great fuel discount program, but it can still vary massively from Montgomery, Alabama to Birmingham, Alabama, just because of distance away. And so, if they could have made it an extra 40 miles before shutting down that night, we find some savings. So there's all those things we're trying to build on and work on in the background. But at the core is her being able to generate those statements, me then look at them and review them, find those issues, make any corrections that are needed, then put that data into a more digestible format, which right now we're going to stick to the basics. I know I mentioned the last video, we pulled the portals down. Some people got links out to the portals. Again, that was not supposed to happen, and it's being corrected. But right now, you're going to get a PDF of your P&L for this month. If the portals get fixed in time, and I'm confident that we put them back out, we will put them back out when they're ready. But the issue there is if it's not perfect when we put it back out at the basics, to me, it just causes more problems and questions. We've got people that have a gap of they got paid last year but don't have a P&L. That's going to take a little more time to go dig it up and find it. Can we? Absolutely. But I think it speaks to we were having some learning curve. The old software was pretty poor at helping out too, but learning curve of what we did. And I would say now, as recently as the last week, we have been able to really figure out things that we had missed that we could optimize and use better for checks and balances. And so, just to this point, and not diving into some of the other things and the communication stuff yet, but just to this point, there's been steps made to make sure that doesn't happen again. I've personally spoken with a lot of people, and I've probably missed a few still. It's hard to get around to everyone, but I plan on talking with almost everyone, especially that have had issues and questions. I love this forum to hit kind of as a blanket and bulk and answer some questions, but there's 5 or 6 people that have some specific problems. I want to address those to make sure that we're on the same page and that we've got a good spot moving forward, which is
Yep.
totally my goal with that.
Cool. Yeah. So maybe if you're missing a few months payment, there's probably a larger issue at hand that you need to address personally. That might
On
be the
most of
reason.
those, yes. Yeah.
Cool.
And if you don't mind, then maybe that's a good segue to dive into communications.
Go for it.
Awesome. So, because I think a good procedure of what those guys to do, right? Like if you've still got an issue, what should I do today? Today's April 18th, right? So we now have a ticket system. Few people started using it like the first week, and we had some failures there. We really weren't ready. But if people have a portal login still, they can go to their portal and create a ticket in there. But there's also a place on the website, truckwisefg.com, to go and create a help support ticket. We now have someone that is managing every portion of that, and they can see about 80% of the data to make responses on general questions pretty quickly. Her goal is to triage that from I can answer this, get an immediate response, move on, close the ticket, everyone's happy, we're good, to okay, this needs an answer from Wesley. She can move it into an item, into a bucket that then not only alerts me right then and sends me an email, sends me reminders.
Oh, nice.
And our goal, obviously, if it's critical, is to have a response within 24 hours. If you should get a response no matter what, but to have an answer within 24 hours. If it's something we have to go dig up some old data on, or match up some payments and stuff, we're still working through a lot of that stuff. It's going to be right, but we're having to go through those things one by one. And again, first goal is to make sure April, which is March's numbers, out on time, accurate, and everyone's paid on time. First step. In the PDFs of the P&L. So that's what we're working on right now. When you start looking at digging out, so we've got a process in place for the communications there. We also have someone that hopefully we can maybe on the next call, maybe say a name, maybe do an introduction or something if that's okay. But I've got someone that's going to come in and help even to a higher level of communications with that will be here in Alabama, that I can give access to, that can talk with my team when they have questions, with the goal that our speed of alerting to problems before it even happens, or if someone owns a truck and their truck was in an accident, or it's down for a longer term repair than a couple of days, we want to be proactive and put that information out. And having that person that's dedicated to communications and marketing kind of all in one here, that has all access to everything, is going to be a massive step forward for that and a massive improvement. It may take 30 to 60 days, right, to get all caught up to speed and see the things. But then when we're blocking and tackling again properly is when we can work on having, a newsletter and having some things go out specifically with more detail about your truck. We've got some good systems and processes, right? People and processes are number two. We'll have the person, we'll have a process. I know this person, I know their work ethic, their history, their character. So all communications will now be held through the support tickets, and Heidi's going to be help triaging those. And then this person coming through for the future for any questions, whether it be where's my payout, where's my P&L, where is last September's P&L, where's why did my truck miss 3 days last month, or why was revenue low, or why was any question that is pertinent enough to raise alarm bells that someone needs an answer, will be handled with those two places exclusively. No more WhatsApp. If you want to just have a conversation or something, send a WhatsApp, or you want to set up a call. I've got a Calendly. I'm going to put it everywhere. We'll try to triage those things too, right? Because availability is what I want to make sure that everyone's seeing of me, and that we're now have a targeted and focused plan how to fix this. once and for all. We made some baby steps and we kind of, threw some things together and got it going. But now it is a very focused. I've got the right people in the right places. We're utilizing the team that's working on the portals properly, and those will get going right. And there's no question that'll be a great added bonus and feature back again, and even more so than people have known before. But getting us organized, getting a good response plan for when there are issues, and hopefully we never use that, right? It's like having 911. You hope you never have to call it, but if it is, we now know that'll never happen again. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's not, it's, yeah, just being, I like the 24-hour response goal, and two, the fact that you get reminders because you're busy. I'm busy. I need reminders for things too. I forget to text people back. And yeah, maybe that was the pitfall of WhatsApp. There's nothing built in there, but yeah, I think a lot of this, through the rocky months, there was like maybe a drop in trust. And I think even if you don't have an answer, just a response in some kind would have probably been, 80% of the solution for most cases. So for you, I'm glad because that just
yeah,
seems a little overwhelming.
yeah, it,
Um,
it did. And I won't dive super deep into that, but yeah, it had been a long period of time where I was only having to take 5 or 6 problem calls a month. A lot of problems I was, giving answers to other people, and they were giving those answers too, right? So it had not had been, and it was kind of at as I had time. But as we took on all these other things, working through those things, and then to have 60 conversations pop up, and it may only been 20 people at a time, but most of the time it's 2, 3 messages before I get back and respond, and they had already felt that they had not gotten the answers in a timely manner, and that there were some gaps there, and totally understandably so. So by the time they'd gotten to me, they were already a little bit frustrated, and I
yep,
understood that. And so when it got to me, and there's only a certain way to in a certain amount of time in a day to do it. It wasn't that no one wasn't important. People will tell you probably I was nights and weekends getting some responses out. Saturday night, hey, I'm going to have you an answer by Monday. Sometimes I miss that timeline on myself by not having reminders, not having something that says this is still open and unaddressed. WhatsApp doesn't help you remember. And if I don't make a note in my phone and then do something with it to tell me to do it,
yeah,
it was a lot going on. And that's one of my biggest failures. And again, now we're trying to create a program where there's a fail safe that things are busy. There's something there to make sure that we handle it.
awesome. Yeah, any last thoughts on that? I got another question locked and loaded.
No, I think that probably does that.
Cool. This something that I haven't had to personally worry about, being an option one investor, but for those with option two and threes, they got all their their eggs are in that one truck, that one basket. And like you're saying, routes vary, customers vary, seasons vary. How, like, if I was an option two or three investor, I might get a little insecure. It'd be like, what if the other guys got better routes that month? What if the other guys, they were more efficiently utilized per se, and however, you gain those efficiencies. But yeah, I guess, how do you see that on from a high level in terms of like evenly distributing kind of like a common performance goal per se?
Yeah. So there's a lot of things to that, but at the highest level, I would like to first say that there's never favoritism given to anyone. So if that question ever happened, we don't have time to give favoritism on that type of stuff, right? Like I couldn't take your truck, Addison, and say I'm going to put it on the best routes, best freight, best driver, best everything. It just does not work that way. So just rule that out for starters. But then from a high level of making sure everyone are hitting some minimum expectations, we have minimum goals internally for load planning and dispatching. We have minimum expectations for the drivers. We have incentives if they hit their big goals as drivers. Like there's a lot of things that we work to for that. There's no question from an efficiency standpoint, and really anybody in trucking, if you call them and they told you they were at maximum efficiency, they'd be lying to you. So we
Yeah.
always have something to work on. So to improve there is important. I will say we have had to make adjustments. So in the wintertime and in the slow season, we have to make adjustments just because, like I think I mentioned earlier, there's project related people that just slow down. And maybe that driver lives between A and B where this project stuff primarily is taking place. And we got to run him on something else for a while. We adjust, we move them to the best thing we can. Will there be some loss efficiency during that time? Yeah, because there's already some loss efficiency in that season, no matter what. Rates are going to stay really flat at all the high volume guys, while volume went up earlier this year than normal. Rates didn't start skyrocketing just yet, right? They've ticked up, but they're not skyrocketing just yet on a high, on a spot market type thing. Our goals, and when we're functioning the way we should be, which we're not there yet, right? But we're utilizing the tools in McLeod, which is the software we use to pick out, inefficiencies with the driver, with the route that they've done, where the driver lives versus where we're running them. What decisions could we have made better to put that truck in a better position? Sometimes things are going to happen. I tell people all the time, like trucking's literally, if you look up Murphy's Law, like there's a truck sitting beside it. I guarantee it. There's always going to be something. It's of the 10 things that could happen with that truck that week, which could be traffic, which could be not getting loaded or unloaded in the timely manner. Driver might get sick in transit, whatever can happen with all these things. If there's 10 things that happen, we need to try to eliminate or reduce the impact of 9 of them, right? And if we can do that, then there should be seamless. As freight's now getting better, as our normal contract and project related customers are building up, those things start getting easier to spot. So we can take reports on a weekly basis and say, okay, the bottom 5, that weren't off, or truck wasn't down or something of that nature. What could we have done better with these? Is it a driver problem? Is it a communication problem? Is it a dispatcher problem? Is the truck, what is the truck not operating properly? Is it using more fuel than normal, so it has a maintenance item that's just not reared its head yet? You can dig more deeply into all of those things when we're using the software and we're using the customer base the way it's supposed to be going. And so we've had to move a lot of those puzzle pieces. We've got some really good opportunities out there that hopefully next time we talk, I'll be able to share some really good wins there. We got a lot of stuff that is really close to crossing some corners, but same thing we talked about before with maintenance, that to that one guy or 2 guys that have a maintenance issue in a month, or 5 guys, or however many trucks that have an issue, they feel the impact of it right then. And our goal, as I mentioned, with hiring Tommy and him coming in to not only run the shop, but run the breakdowns, negotiate the bills, see if there's savings, see if we can save time on repair. But the time on repair is the biggest problem that we face that we cannot directly impact. We can indirectly impact. If a truck goes down for a $600 sensor, has to get towed in, so we already have a tow bill, and it's in limp mode. It won't go greater than 5 miles per hour. It sits there. There was a period during COVID you couldn't get the part, right? So that was its own challenge. Sometimes now the parts can only be bought from certain dealerships, right? If it's like these key parts on the warranties, only certain places can do warranty work on these. So we have to go to those places. We will get there. They'll tell us it's 2 days to get diagnosed. And if it's what we think it is, repaired, and it's on the road, and we call in 2 days, hey man, we got to do more testing, or we ordered the part. It was supposed to be overnight in here yesterday. We're always trying to save that 1 day, but those 2 or 3 days have turned to, it's going to be a week before we can look at it. And you then have to make the decision of what the lost revenue is for that week and the profitability on the truck versus how much it's going to take for me to tow it somewhere else. And when you get it somewhere else, are they going to be able to do it more quickly? That's where Tommy comes in, and having somebody that's really active in it. And he comes and asks questions to me. He'll ask questions to operations manager, like, what can we do to try to pick this up? You got any ideas? It's a daily, constantly triage of little things, because tires blow and all kinds of stuff happening. That's just part of trucking. The time of which repairs take it's eating more time than it should, which impacts a lot. So maybe that answers the question.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, it's something that I haven't personally had to deal with, but I can
Right.
only imagine, there's a lot of people that probably that's maybe crossed their mind. So, um, yeah, to know that you're too busy to even pick favorites is probably good.
Well,
Um,
even the guys in the dispatch and load planning room, right? Like if they've got favorite drivers, they're usually the easiest ones, right? Because they take exactly what they're supposed to, they're where they're supposed to be, when they're
yeah,
supposed to be.
they don't
They don't have
request
time to
special
pick
treatment.
favorites. Yeah, they don't have to. It just happens. And again, there's sometimes some people that just aren't a great fit to be here from a driver standpoint. And even in staff and things, we've made a few changes the past month and a half here at Rangeway. Um, it that's always going to be things that happen, and again, making sure we're proactive on those is where we have to be. We can't let anything that's a problem, we try to correct the problem, we do the right thing because I believe in that. And when then it doesn't meet that expectation, we change it. Same thing with the driver. But typically with a driver, you can make a phone call, and I've talked to a lot of drivers directly the past month. When there's a problem, you could typically make a phone call and find out what it is. It's, well, I didn't get home last week when I was supposed to, and I missed my kid's birthday. Or, and a lot of times that's because, delays in shipping, receiving, or traffic or something. Or, I think, you know, Jimmy is getting, a better load than me, or I want to move this load planner to that load planner, right? We deal with
Because
a lot of
your
stuff there.
your drivers
Yeah,
are getting paid based off of revenue, right? It's not like a
right.
salary.
That's
So
right.
yeah,
They're a percentage. Yep. They're driven
yeah.
to do more revenue. Yeah,
So you probably already have a pretty a pretty level playing field just for driver fairness. So
that's right.
the same thing would go to investor fairness. So
That's
that,
exactly right.
that
Yep.
that's good to
And
know.
same thing on the driver front. Most of the time, the guys that think, well, those guys over there are making more money than me, don't see except like the 1 week where they have just a crazy, insanely good week, and then the next week that it averages back out, and they have done better that week. We all live in like the right now, and I think
Yeah,
it's easy to say, well, yeah, well, this week it didn't work out great, or whatever. But I think that's where getting Retta in front of more drivers too, right? Building relationships, but all the way to the dispatch level, safety, building that relationship, accounting, building a relationship with them, all kind of takes everyone up a little bit. So if I'm just kind of coasting, and we're able to get 10% more efficiency out of you, not only do you make more money, but it's better for everyone. We've serviced more customers, we've made more profitability, and so in that arena, it's just like any other business. Um, we're just dealing with a lot of moving pieces and moving parts to orchestrate.
yep. Yeah, those were like the only two kind of pressing questions I had. I don't know if there's anything kind of in the back of your mind that you wanted to get out there, but I know you wanted to keep it a little
Well,
shorter today. We were pretty
yeah.
long
Well,
last time.
I didn't want to. Yeah, last time we had a lot to talk about. There's a couple things, and I don't remember. You may have your last video pulled up. I know one person had mentioned that Truckwise doesn't have an authority when they run
Oh
safer,
yeah.
and that Rangeway had different count of trucks when they go pull up safer scores and such. And so, easy answer on this one: Truckwise is not a trucking company. It never will be a trucking company. So it will never have an authority. It'll never operate the trucks directly because that's not what it was founded for. Truckwise is meant to be a place where everyone comes in, and it's the central source of where you sign your contract, whether you're doing option two, option three, whatever, it doesn't really matter. You sign your contract, it provides a service to you, and then we place your truck with a carrier. Well, the carrier's Rangeway. And keep in mind, I'm still Truckwise, right? It's still me. It's not some guy hidden in a corner somewhere that could make some crazy decision at some point. So from a
Different
credibility, just
corporate
in the trucking
entity.
industry, yeah, it's just two different entities to separate, and it should give some confidence to people that if Rangeway ever failed or had a problem, we just pull the trucks back into Truckwise, and we go leverage my knowledge, my connections with other trucking companies, and we place them with that, and then I vet them. I oversee that, and I make sure that everything's going right. So it's a fail safe for worst case. It's always been that a few years, down the road, it's a place that we could refer trucks to other carriers, because Rangeway at some point is just not going to be able to add a bunch of trucks. It's not at the top of my agenda right now to add a bunch of trucks anyway. There's a lot of things, and that maybe is what I'll close with, is kind of my priorities. But Truckwise will never have an authority, and just want to make sure everyone's good there with what the relationship of A to B is. Truckwise is where everyone comes in, all of the contracts start, and then there's an agreement between Truckwise and Rangeway. There's an actual document and legal agreement of how to do that. And with each person, if they go out and they buy a truck, they then have to sign an agreement directly with Rangeway, giving Rangeway the authority to operate their truck, for us to use it, operate it as if it's ours, hire the driver, all those things. And that's really important to keep paper, right? Anything happens, documentation's key. We have those things. There are a few people that were missing some agreements on the lease on type thing. That's where we're going to go through and clean all these things up, make sure everyone's got their own drive that saves all the documents and all the things. And that's part of us with this refresher and what we're doing right now. Rangeway, if you go look at any given day of how many trucks are active, we're not required federally to update that, but every 2 years, unless you make substantial change up or down. So it's not something that we would, every time we add a truck, go add a truck, or remove a truck every time we release one. I've got a gnat in here. So that number we adjust. Usually we do it twice a year, every 6 months.
But that's above and beyond, it sounds like.
It is. It really is only required. I think it's biannually. But anyways, it's something of that nature. And so we do it more than you have to, because there's a lot of factors that impact that too. And there's carriers out there that play that game. They may go and put that they have 100 trucks, and they may have 150 because they just bought 50 new ones. When they rate your safer scores for every category that they track, it puts you in a pool of like people. And they've got really smart guys out there that can figure out, well, if we stay in this pool an extra 4 or 5 months till our insurance renewal is done, our safer scores are going to look a little bit better in these 2 categories, because our peers that they compare our scores and our damage and our crashes to, and our driver drug and alcohol and all this, we actually, and it's a massively flawed system. FMCSA knows it's flawed, but they've doubled down that they have to stick with it, because there's no real great way to do it anyway. So that, people play games with that. We're probably a little too small to play games with that. And it's probably the guys playing games that, 100 to 500 trucks with it. It doesn't help us that much to do it, but that will be updated, periodically to reflect the amount of trucks that are running. We have to report if the miles quarterly. They get those reports. They see it, so they know what we're doing mileage standpoint, and we do update that. We want it to be as accurate as possible when we do update it. So that's it.
That's good to know, though, because I did the same thing. Like, hey, is this a scam? You go on the FMCSA website, you see, okay, there's Rangeway carriers, they got X number of trucks, just like they said. But it's good to know it's not exactly a live feed. So
for sure.
For those looking, that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. So if you're good with it, I think I'd just like to kind of close with some priorities of where my focus is and where we go forward real quick. So, a lot of reflection here the past several weeks, and a lot of things to decide, okay, how do we repair? How do we make sure that we're growing the current investors and taking care of everyone? And how do we make sure we're taking care of Rangeway, the business, to make sure we're able to flourish? And how do we make sure that Truckwise is doing what it's supposed to do? And I think we've talked through the Truckwise stuff, the communications, the support tickets, the more organization, and the places that we're improved there. But for me, for a priority standpoint, there's no question. Number one, it's already been implemented and being worked on, is that communication, is making sure that the PDFs are out on P&Ls on time, the payouts are out on time, and that we don't miss anybody this month. That's priority number one. That's not going to change no matter what happens. Part of that will be fixing the portals eventually, right? But the portals are not priority number one right now. That's an added value, and it's something we're definitely going to keep working on. We've got a better focus to work on now. So excited about that, but it's not number one. Number one is just exactly that, doing what we say we're going to do and producing. But number two is we've got to improve everything that we talked about on this call with Rangeway, getting more revenue out of each truck, keep getting those 1%, 10% problems that we can impact and lift up to get that extra 10% out of every truck we can every month and do it better. But then when I look at, we've talked about this several times of, okay, what is the one problem that we could face that could make Rangeway struggle beyond where we're at now? I'm already living that. We're dealing with it every day. It's something we've talked with about a lot of people before. We haven't pushed it that much lately, but we're going to, as a second priority, focus as Rangeway closing out this deal to wipe out our factoring company. We've been able to do part of that, and we're floating a lot internally. And there's been people that have come in that have already started that process. We need to wipe it out and finish it once and for all. That factoring industry as a whole has changed so much, and at every level, they'll tell you straight up, we've had to change to protect ourselves. There's a lot of people that went out of business, a lot of fraud, a lot of things that went on, but guess who gets held accountable for all the fraud? The people that aren't doing anything wrong. And it's made it difficult. Our software transition made it maybe a little more difficult on them and some things we've dealt with. But when you talk just individual customer credit lines, checking all the boxes when we go out to haul a load and we've got $100,000 credit line approved, we deliver $50,000 worth of freight, we go invoice it because we've done everything we're supposed to, and all of a sudden that credit account's cut off. Or we've got a $250,000 credit line with a customer. We are constantly in that 150 to 180. Well, next thing you know, they've reduced it from 250 to 180. And I was told just this past week that they're looking now daily and at very granular levels at every single customer, at every single industry trend, and they're reviewing of their risk profile, because we may not be the only customer hauling, or only their customer hauling for that customer that's the shipper. And so they may get overwhelmed with $10 million with a massive corporation that all of the factoring companies, trucking companies are hauling for, and they just feel it better at higher risk. It has nothing to do with my risk profile or how much freight we've done with that company. They're having to adjust because they're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollar credit lines and their auditors from the banks making sure they've got proper paperwork and all these things. We've not made some of that easy, but the moving target that we're trying to hit, I've asked for 6 weeks for what procedures, what are the new rule changes, what do my people need to be following. I literally don't get replies on most of those emails. I've been told I can't talk to upper management, whereas that's never been the case. And again, maybe we're not a good fit for them. And here's the thing, they've done at times and things to help us out when probably it was against their policies. But they've got a lot of confusion, a lot of things going on, and we've got to focus to finish that out and wipe it off. That's not bringing any net new trucks for us. We're going to offer that. We've always offered it as a $40,000 for 8% since we started back trying it again. We're just going to break that in half and do a $20,000 for 4%. Every 2 people get assigned to 1 truck, and we would like to wipe this out and be done with it once and for all. Yes, we'll add people in that we have to manage and send out statements and things every month, but that's the easiest ones to really do. It's not adding any extra burden on us. It's actually going to take a massive burden and a massive ceiling off of Rangeway to be able to go and do the things and be better, and me not having to focus on this stuff, because it gets to a place where it's at a level that I can't ask anyone here in the company to deal with it. I have to do it because it's so testy. And one person says or does the wrong thing, they could cut us off any day, and we've got to figure out how to survive for about 60 days with no cash flow. So, those things we prepare and kind of troubleshoot for a little bit, but that's priority number 2 is to make sure that we can kind of go and do that. So we're not adding any real net new trucks through that, but really trying to close that program out. And then, we've had to revamp a few things in driver recruiting. We've got a great place and great things we're doing. We've had to replace some guys, and part of what we do is part of what we expect to do when you hire a lot of guys in a short period of time the past 6 months. It has become an industry standard for guys to job hop twice a year. Our goal is to retain the good ones. And there's some that aren't a great fit, and we help them find another home. But even still, when they're here, we try to make it as good an experience as we can. So driver recruiting is, while I listed it third, it's something we've already done. We've already changed. We've redone a few things of how we recruit drivers. We've got a great way to do that. We're vetting these guys really well, so we're not getting unsafe guys, nothing like that. Most of the time, it's just not a good fit or character fit, or where they live or their expectations. After they get in, maybe don't hit where they want them to be on type of freight or anything they're hauling. So that's the focus right now. So if anybody out there knows anybody, and they're like, how can we help? I'm not asking anybody to do that. That would be the place that we're focused on doing. And I think it's a great opportunity for people. It's some consistency. It's, 4% for $20,000 on a truck for 36 months. And it lets us hit a goal that by going and launching that out there, it's going to pay for itself still. We're still in the same, we're not exceeded the number of total people we wanted to take in, and we're just raising a bunch of money. That's not it. It's still to get us to that original goal, finish it off, and then the savings over the next 3 years pay for 80% of what we're doing in this. So it's not just a cash grab, it's not a money grab. It just so happens that we got to have a huge amount of money to buy them out and operate. And why not bring people in and make more success stories out of it? While there's been all the things that have happened and the ups and downs, communication failures, option one's probably the easiest and most consistent one. That doesn't mean that option 2 and 3 aren't important. That's where we spend the bulk of all of our time. It lifts up the option 1 people that we are doing that. So I think, to wrap that out, that's where the focus is. There's a lot of things that I see happening down the road, but right now the core focus is on making sure that we do what we say we're going to do, cover what we have, finish out wiping out our biggest risk, and make sure we got high quality drivers coming in, right people. People, processes, and our service we provide is kind of the core of everything we do. So we're excited about this year. I'm excited about where things are going. I'm excited to kind of have the ability to make a few things right that weren't. Those things excite me. They don't scare me. So we're not going anywhere. And man, again, I just appreciate you taking time. I know we probably went longer than I thought we were going to, but it
No, there's always next month.
As the guy in the comments said, I can talk. So
I mean,
what's crazy is this isn't usually what I do either. But I would rather kill people with information and get everything out there than there be doubt or the lack of transparency at some level. Because this is who we are. It's what we do. Trucking's it's all we do, man. I don't have a side business. I don't make woodcraft. I don't even play golf that much anymore. I think I've played 3 or 4 times last year and none this year. Took my daughter to the driving range one afternoon. I always told her if she asks, I will always do it. But but yeah, there's not a lot else out there. This is my focus. It's things that I'm passionate about, and when things don't go well, it doesn't sit well with me. I handle problems and adversity really well, but it does not sit well with me because I want to make it right. So,
right. Yeah. And I think for everyone watching, if you guys, I mean, maybe some didn't get explained fully, comment, because Wesley does look through my comments. And
it's hard to tell who people are, or I would have directly responded to them, but yeah.
Yeah. And I am not affiliated with his business. I don't know all the answers, but I mean, hopefully this is going to be a more routine thing. So at least once a month, you'll get to see from Wesley, to get those answers, whether I don't want to be the guy that answers. But yeah, I think that closes it. So
awesome.
Wesley,
thanks again. I really appreciate it.
All right.